Tourists, and ladies to another episode of the Chapter House, the OGC's look into the men and the chapters that make up the Old Glory Club. Joining us this week is the Iron Loam Gang of Oklahoma, represented by Rowdy. How you doing, Rowdy?
Doing just fine. How do you? Excuse me. How about you?
Oh, doing great. It's a wonderful, crisp fall evening. The jack-o'-lanterns are out. And we're just ready for, spooky season to reach its zenith. Getting started, I got to know, what is an iron loam?
Well, the state of Oklahoma is known for quite a few things that make it distinct. One is the deep red soil found primarily in the center of the state. Official name is iron silt loam. And I think among a crowd where appeals to blood and soil aren't verboten, it was a pretty appropriate name to mix the concepts together there. So
yeah, I like that. It's a nice little turn of phrase. Is this just owing to the heritage of the people who started the Iron Loam Gang, or is it just a nod to the organization in general?
It's a nod just to the soil that you can find primarily in the center of the state that's distinctly red. Ironically, while every other, the majority of the founders of the chapter are Oklahoma natives. I am not. I'm a California expat, sort of did the reverse grapes of wrath, as my boss likes to joke, and headed out to the state about 2 years ago, where I started the chapter along with some co-workers and mutuals.
Very cool. I've only been out there once, and when I read Osage, my brain immediately went to the Japanese, and I pronounced it Osage. I was very confused, and everyone around me was too. So it's a beautiful state. I am sorry to see that it's so marred by those giant wind turbines. I know that, Oklahoma is kind of known for its windy, sweeping plains, but where I grew up and where I spend most of my time is very hilly, and there aren't a terrible many of those big spinning eyesores, or I guess worse when they're not spinning. Is it just in the north of the state where you can find those, or are they all over?
They are not all over. I'd expect that you'd see those in some of the more far-flung areas. I've spent a little bit of time in the western part of the state, especially drives to and from home. You can see plenty of those sort of out in the empty plains out there. But of course, Oklahoma is known for its energy sector historically. A lot of oil, especially in the Osage area you're referring to, as well as pretty much most of the state. So oil wells and the likes you can find out and about, derricks. Thankfully, the landscape isn't scarred by them too much. Plenty of, I wish I knew the technical name, but long poles emanating from the ground to indicate to airlines that there is, in fact, a ground despite completely flat terrain. There's a tentative plan to build a 1,907-foot skyscraper, in the middle of a pretty low density American city that has been in the work for a little while. That would be quite the eyesore if it ever came about. There's sort of skepticism if that's ever going to happen. But pretty much what you can expect from a Great Plains city like Wichita or Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, the question, of course, being why. But that's kind of interesting. Those poles, so that the planes don't slam into the ground because it's so flat. Like at night, they wouldn't be able to see any terrain.
Yeah, somebody may correct me on that. That's always been my suspicion. I believe they may also serve purpose when it comes to weather forecasting. Oklahoma sort of is known as Tornado Alley for a good reason. Every Friday, at least in the Oklahoma City area, they test sirens, which was quite the shock to me the first time I had heard them when I first moved. I believe Tulsa is a different day of the week, but that's something you have to be ever reticent for, especially around the spring and autumn time.
So are those Are those just typical air raid sirens, or are they more like the weird tornado sirens that you hear in Chicago?
My guess is they'd be closer to what you're talking about in Chicago. Can't say I've had experience with either one.
Yeah, they're pretty creepy, given the right atmosphere, the sound for the tornado warnings. But whatever. I'd come to remember that a couple of years ago, one of our ridiculous Supreme Court justices decided to put on his clown shoes and his makeup and reveal to the nation that the state of Oklahoma was never actually legally acquired by the United States, and so it actually belongs to, the Amerindians. Did anything ever come of that?
My understanding is the parts of the state that those tribes were ruled to have dominion over, that doesn't extend past matters of criminal law. So it is sort of a legal gray area, but the history of Amerindians in the United States has a lot to do with how the federal government has treated them, and in many cases just outright bought them off, made them dependents on the federal teat. And it's very interesting. I haven't spent too much time looking into this, but the politics of these tribes, that used to be these, fierce interlocking warriors, not only together against the whites, the settlers, but also amongst themselves, really just argue over some of the most petty nonsense when it comes to rights to put casinos on their land. I don't even think that they have a lot of say in the oil that's left over at this point. So they really have been defanged as a people, which is, on one hand, quite sad to see. But on the other, if they're going to have any sort of token victory, I'd rather it be a ceremonial one.
Yeah, I mean, many such cases. I'm looking at a map of Oklahoma. I see, the Creek and the Choctaw, and our good friend George Bagby does quite a lot of work chronicling what went on out in these areas. But we are joined also tonight by Mr. D, not that Mr. D, but Oklahoma's own Mr. D. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, we hear you coming in loud and clear. And actually, this is perfect timing because we just spoke a little bit about what's going on in Oklahoma. But you guys wanted to talk tonight a little bit about a little bit of news that has been on our radars for the last couple of weeks, and that is the Young Republicans group chat leaks. Now, aside from the normal takes where the GOP and its affiliate organizations have absolutely no idea what time it is and are basically just various forms of circus folk, I imagine that this has had an effect on the men involved, which you can speak to, Mr. D.
Absolutely. What we had was an unfortunate removal of very talented individuals who really believed in the Republican cause but believed that the current national leadership of the Young Republicans were not capable of taking us where we really needed to be. I'm obviously using a voice changer. I don't feel comfortable with sharing my direct voice and identity because everybody involved are distraught and may not be very happy with me being here tonight. And there's, of course, people who were absolutely out for blood and are going to probably pay attention to this broadcast more than some of the other ones because of what was involved.
Sure. So let's get a little background, and we'll keep it as vague as possible. I imagine that you having this kind of special knowledge into this whole nonsense means that you were in some way involved. Could you expand on your involvement to the extent that you're able?
We had started a project I'll give you every 2 years, the national board has an election for its national leadership. And me and several others were kind of concocted this idea. You know how everybody says, oh, they're going to start a band or run for office or start a business when they're drinking or they're talking with friends late at night. We had decided to we can just do things. And so we had begun something of an intelligence operation and an analytics operation to see what it would take to take over the Young Republicans. We saw it as a green field with a couple a little bit of rusted out infrastructure and some squatters that just needed to be shooed along. We had absolutely no idea how close to success we would come. And it was insane. I'm only really sad to say that most of our success came from the mistakes of the current national board, the casus belli they would continuously give to its individual membership to despise them, the stupid fights it would start, and then go on to lose and make people hate them more, make people not want to join the club, make people not want to join the federation or their local chapters. We would constantly and continuously find people who did not like the current state of their own state federation or the national organization and decided we can just do things. And so we just did things. We built chapters, we built state federations across the United States. Goodness gracious, we basically did their job for them. And we were able to build networks and campaigns, and we built careers. We started careers with this little project, and it was great.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. You had a group of guys who were already in the Young Republicans. Is this
Correct.
accurate?
Correct.
So you had a bunch of guys who were already in the Young Republicans, and you kind of saw the institutional rot that was represented by the leadership. And so you kind of said, well, we can take this in a better direction, in a direction that isn't just going to lead to the inevitable irrelevancy of the organization. And you just kind of took it from there?
Correct. Essentially, whatever little relevancy this organization has left in whatever county you live in, whatever city you live in, whatever state you live in, that's probably because of our little friend group, of which I'm very sad to state some of them were knocked out of politics, but not even half of us were.
Well, I mean, that's good to hear. There's a little silver lining in that there's a lot of lessons to be learned. A lot of object lessons in OPSEC, but also what you guys have learned from, your operations within the Young Republicans. Now, could you take us along how you guys got started, kind of, because, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like the idea was that, it can be spun in a sinister way to say, oh, we're trying to take over this organization. But really, it sounds more like you guys were a part of it and you're saying, listen, we want this to be an effective organization. The current leadership and the system as it is currently constructed prevents us from being able to actually get anything done. So what can you take us through kind of the steps how you guys started working your way into being able to make the Young Republicans a more effective organization?
Well, we were able to network with each other. We were already successful leaders. You had chapter leaders, state leaders, region leaders, or congressional district leaders, depending on the makeup of their state and their region. And they were successful in spite of the national organization. As a matter of fact, many successful Young Republicans would often have their careers tarnished or be harassed or just be gatekept because they were effective, because they were too busy being effective, and they weren't willing to besmirch Donald Trump in public. They weren't, especially from 2020 through 2023, from his inevitable campaign for presidency. And then suddenly everybody, I guess, pulled their heads out of their butts and realized, oh, wait, I can't just work for Nikki Haley and be in the Young Republicans, even though many of you were. And so since we had already basically been running the organization by ourselves, we'd already been able to start many chapters by ourselves. We were kind of tired for doing their jobs for them. And then we'd been able to network with each other through our jobs in politics, in public service, in the private sector. And most of these people were most of these guys are in the private sector full time. And then we decided we would do a dry run this year, I guess, during last August's election, and got far closer than we had ever thought. Mostly because of the outbursts of the current national board. We had been able to recruit. We had SOPs, we had training programs. We were able to essentially create an entire infrastructure parallel to the national board, to the national organization. I shouldn't even say parallel, because the national organization doesn't have any structure, doesn't really have training, can't recruit, can't run an organization, can't even fundraise. I'm not sure what this means to any of you listening or to you. They've been fired by their mail shop. Fired by the mail shop that sends out the mail. That's basically like having your electricity pulled. The only way that happens is if you're just not paying the bills.
So I've got a couple of questions. How long about when you guys got together and you're like, we can do this a little bit better? How long ago was that?
This would have been a year and a half.
All right. So it took you about a year and a half to kind of get to where you are now. And what you're describing, it kind of sounds like this leak may have been kind of an attack from within in order to kind of break apart this network that was working within the Young Republicans.
No, I wouldn't say that at all. Knowing the people who were involved in that as well, there had always been very stupid and petty drama between the New York Young Republicans, the city, and the New York Young Republicans, the state, mostly over petty nonsense. I'm of the opinion a lot of people involved have every white girl, blue hair female says this, that, oh, so and so has a personality disorder. I think several people involved in the leaking of this do have actual personality disorders and mental disturbances, or at the very least, just bad attitudes, and essentially decided to destroy one person's career over something stupid and petty, and ended up destroying the lives and careers of at least 6 people so far on top of that, and possibly more. I don't know what else could have been leaked and what else Politico is sitting on, what else the White House is sitting on, what else the RNC is sitting on. They knew about this leak ahead of time, by the way.
The Young Republicans did.
Correct. No. The White House, the RNC, everybody was trying to kill it. Everybody knew about it ahead of time, and were attempting to essentially, kill the story because it was just so destructive.
So the leaks weren't an intentional action against your group from the leaders of the Young Republicans that weren't a part of what you were doing?
No, to be as frank as possible, they're not that competent. They don't have that capability, frankly.
Okay, so this was more the actions of some disturbed individuals that were kind of let in. My question then is for operational security, from an operational security standpoint, how is it that these bad actors kind of slipped through the cracks?
It's the old story. They have money. They already have the connections. They had already been involved in these efforts. I'm sure everybody listening, and you yourself in your own political escapades, if you get up to any, you find older people who've already been fighting the establishment, fighting neocons and moderates, and just very people who really shouldn't be here. But they themselves also shouldn't be here. They cause problems. They bomb throw. They drink, they say racial slurs in public, without it being, before it was cool. It's just not cool. Don't do that. You probably find people, these people were already involved. I'm afraid that this is just kind of the lay of the land that we ran into. For example, many people in the Old Glory Club, are part of, I guess, what the E-Right, and there were already members and people in the E-Right who themselves maybe were not the best human capital and were causing problems. Same problem that we ran into. These people were already here. They were just, they were something of the mold on the wall that you couldn't get rid of. So we just put them in the group chats and put them in some positions and hoped everything would go all right. And it's a mistake we'll never make again.
All right, this is a good lesson for everyone. If you have if you hear someone gains a reputation for a reason, and if you've got if your instincts are telling you this is a bad actor, it's okay to be mean and say no. That's very interesting. So how many state chapters were involved in this kind of parallel Young Republicans?
I don't have the direct number on me, but more than actually voted for the national board. Many of these states, you might find this to be political, inside baseball, but maybe some of your listeners who want to get involved in this fight might be interested. Many state leaderships unilaterally decided that their votes would go to the national board in total open, leading to total protest from the actual the chapters within, from the actual members within. I think we had maybe, there's only 45 states that have federations, basically nationwide, which is something automatically a failure. I think we had maybe 20 states. We had the biggest states who all wanted to change the national level, who wanted to take this toward not even necessarily a more right-wing direction, but a direction where you can keep the lights on, which is something we don't have now. I'd say 20 to 25 states right off the bat. And then the other side had what we call paper federations, where you have 5 members, that's a state federation, and they're all going to vote for the national leadership because those are the people who put them there. They don't work. They probably don't have any kind of real involvement in politics. They sit there and go to frat parties 4 times a year.
So they're
I'm going to go on a tangent.
Please go on a tangent, but their like official position in this would be that they're just kind of networkers.
I wish they were networking. They can't even do that very well. They like the party. They like to feel important. They need something on the resume many times because they haven't been successful in anything else. If you ever go to let's say the National Federation Convention, which is mostly open to the public, and any of you can attend, really, there's really not a whole lot of vetting. We could talk about that later if you want. These people, most of their political existence is basically just to be the state chair of the YRs. They're not respected by their state party leadership. They have no direct involvement in elections. They don't knock doors. They don't run for office. And when they do, they lose. Pretty much they just show up 4 times a year, vote how they're told by the national leadership, and they don't really get involved with anything or anybody.
All right. Yeah. So this sounds like it sounds like the perfect bureaucratic system. These people exist just to exist, and more of them come up just to send in more votes. Is this an accurate representation?
It's a very accurate representation.
Yeah, that sounds like a nice microcosm of our government in general. So I guess they're doing a good job of mirroring that. I did have a question before we started getting into the individual members who were affected by this and the leadership and the vetting processes. But this seemed like it kind of sent shockwaves through the Young Republican network. Some of the chapters closed down. I don't know if that's pending an investigation or if they're just purging. What has been the fallout of this in the network at large?
Disastrous. You have states who absolutely voted for the national leadership, voted against, I guess we'll say the Patriots, voted against all the right people, and then still have intense scrutiny going on in Oklahoma, in Texas, in Alabama, in Georgia, the Carolinas, places that split or weren't really involved in all this drama or all this nonsense are getting heavy blowback from who else but the usual suspects, older Republicans who are pretty moderate, who are looking for any excuse to put down more right-wing Republicans, willing to put down more right-wing political operatives. I hate using that word, but we'll use that word today. You have at least 6 people who have lost their jobs, who have been totally ruined. I think that there were probably more people in that chat that were leaked. Why Politico is sitting on those people, I don't know. I do know that it will be to their discredit. They're going to use it in the future against them. I'm just waiting for that shoe to drop. Then you have several state federations have been shut down. Yeah, New York, Kansas. Let's see. Vermont, I keep hearing is yes, is no. Arizona refused to be shut down. They are attempting to, last I checked, they were saying they were going to have him thrown out of the organization by force or to shut down it unilaterally. It's been disastrous for fundraising. It's been disastrous for PR. It's been terrible for recruiting. The more base young guys see an organization that throws its own under the bus, the more moderates see an organization that, first of all, doesn't have anything going for it, frankly. And secondly, they think is infested with people who are looking to leak their jokes or infested with people who are too based and they don't like immigrants.
So what do you see? I know I'm asking you to peer into your crystal ball here, but what do you see as the do you think the young Republicans are going to survive this in any meaningful way?
I do, actually. I suspect three outcomes. One, I suspect any day now that at some point the RNC is maybe just going to want to shut down the program. The official college Republican auxiliary has, I think, one state, give or take, just one state out of 50. The other 49 don't have federations, or they're under breakaway federations. And then you have the YRs, who are probably going to continue for a while. You may have breakaway groups who say, we're going to be the base young patriots, professionals of America, and that'll probably die pretty quickly. I think the YRs will limp along and will continue to be an organization that could absolutely work for people like me and people like you and everybody else in the Old Glory Club who are looking for a place to drink beer and be openly right-wing and voting for the right-wing party. But today, that's not going to be the case.
So you're predicting that kind of a breakaway faction of the YR will continue to exist with that name?
No, I'm just stating that some states may decide to separate from the national organization, which I don't think will go very well. And maybe they go and take over the organization, but that's a very long shot. That's really not realistic. I think the YRs, the first option is the most likely. You know, instead of being shut down or being overtaken by another organization, they limp along for a while. And these squatters and these usual suspects will just continue eating the corn seed for an otherwise what could have been a great organization.
Well, it sounds like there's a real opportunity here, and this may have been a blessing in disguise. I mean, you know, the Old Glory Club, we are not a political organization. We are a fraternity, but we are always looking for young men who are serious about doing good in their community. And you know, part of it is building these parallel social networks that can kind of exist outside of the establishment's kind of framing of how social interaction should go. So if this is a way for the GOP to kind of lose their grasp on these young men who want to kind of push back against the system, like I said, this might end up being a blessing. Now, for the 6 people so far who have, suffered some consequences for this, and those that may be coming in the future, does the network that you've already established have any means of helping them land on their feet?
A little bit. We've given some emotional support. Some of them are distraught and don't pick up anybody's phone calls. They're being looked after. They're taking some time off. They're going to take a little walk with God. As far as getting them employment, a little bit. I think 2 people are going to be okay. You know, they're going to be okay. They're going to get over this pretty quickly. The other 4, I'm not quite sure because of their position. Their downfall is a little more scandalous. I would absolutely advise them to join the Old Glory Club, among with other, church organizations, fraternal organizations. But right now, no, my network doesn't really have the juice to give people who are out of state employment. I think they're going to have to, unfortunately, take care of themselves.
Yeah, I was going to ask. This isn't something that we've heard of personally within the Old Glory Club, that there were people who were affected by this. But if they do decide to become brothers of the Old Glory Club, obviously we will do everything that we can through their local chapters to help them land on their feet. This wouldn't be the first time that the Old Glory Club has had to deal with some sort of hoopla surrounding pearl clutching in the media. But I had another question about the future of the network that you and your cohort have been able to establish within the Young Republicans. Now, obviously, if the Young Republicans is going to be purging, it seems like those that were able to kind of slip under the radar aren't really going to have the kind of allies that they once had within the organization itself. And so while I ask a question of what the future of that parallel network looks like in general, I am also wondering, for those members that did slip under the radar, what incentive would they have with kind of sticking it out with the Young Republicans?
What the future looks like for the patriotic network of people who want to make YRs great again and restore it to an organization that really wants to support young people in general, not necessarily Republicans. First, we regroup a little bit. You got to regroup. We've been talking to each other and kind of patching over some holes. We've even been doing some fence mending. There were people who are pretty aghast at what happened and pretty aghast at everything that's occurred, that reached out to the affected. People we wouldn't have imagined had reached out and supported us, did reach out and support us. Something of a white pill for you in the audience at how many people, we're talking like hundreds of people have reached out to this six to extra who have been affected and are pretty disgusted at the way they've been treated. People who I had otherwise thought were incredibly viciously moderate were treating them quite well and offering them things like employment and support. I think the future is a little more right-wing than we had expected. So we're going to recruit, and then we're going to recruit again. We're going to go back to recruiting.
That is quite the white pill, and it does, as you say, kind of give an indication of which way the wind is blowing. I'm glad to hear that you guys were able to provide some sort of support for these guys.
The support came organically.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful thing. That means the network was effective. And before I hand it back to you to continue talking about the future of this network, we are always happy to have patriotic Americans who are willing to take the risk and get things done within our ranks. So I would encourage anyone who is involved in this, please do. If you're in need of brotherhood and that sort of thing, please reach out to the Old Glory Club, send us an email. But Mr. D, please continue with what you see in the future after the recruiting.
Once we've patched over, and done some of the fence mending, the network was built with the intention of not winning the last election and being able to seize what is essentially the lowest hanging fruit of the Republican Party. This same network is going to keep recruiting.
I'm sorry. What could you explain what you meant by that? By seizing the lowest hanging fruit?
So every single, let's say RNC, where we go and we inaugurate who the presidential nominee is going to be, we get, you're basically the chairman's basically mandated to get time on the RNC to speak. The YRs have a say in going on to the Republican Party. They hear everything. Many state federations directly get a vote on the affairs of the state Republican Party and, who they endorse, who they give money to, what they affect. This is quite simply, the back door into the Republican Party. many people who are state federation leaders or local chapter leaders get selected to go run for office. Unfortunately, that's typically where they leave the YRs and stop giving it anything, because it's an organization that can't organically create political capital. And it would have been Peter Gunther on the stage at the RNC giving a great rousing speech about how this is not an economic zone, this is a nation, and the nation belongs to its young people. This would have been this really was the lowest. This is probably the lowest hanging target. If you want to change the needle of the Republican Party, if you want to change the needle in national politics, changing who's in charge of the YRs is the easiest way to do so. It would be the cheapest way to do so, frankly.
So the young Republicans do actually have some sort of say in the RNC at large?
They get a small portion of, they've been one might say they've been sequestered out of the way, like a redheaded stepchild, because they've been out of step with the Republican Party since at least 2016, 2017.
Okay, that is interesting. I was unaware that the Young Republicans was anything more than just kind of a recruitment tool for the larger GOP. But that is interesting that they've been kind of, this is what happens with the youth, right? They always kind of push further than their elders. So you were going at this as a kind of piecemeal operation.
Essentially, flipping chapters, then building chapters if we had to, and then flipping states. And along the way, we built an entire network across the country of successful young people who wanted to see change, who like Donald Trump, who like J.D. Vance, who like portions of the E-right. This is not a very extreme movement at all. I myself don't consider myself very extreme. If anything, these were normal young men and some very normal young women, many of which were married and have kids and have private jobs, who decided that they didn't like this portion of the Republican Party, that they could change it with a small amount of investment and small time investment, and have been successful in doing so.
So this, the parallel network is going to continue operation. It seems like you guys were robust enough to survive this shock. And are you optimistic that any future shocks, you say you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, that when that happens, you'll be able to withstand that as well?
Yes to both. The loss that we've incurred has been horrific and embarrassing. And when I knew it was coming down the pipe before it had dropped, and I was hoping that it would just be kind of papered over, I do think the usual suspects saw it and saw an immediate opportunity to try and purge as many young men as possible. Forget about, extreme or right-wing or nationalist or Christian. They just saw an opportunity to purge as many young men from the ranks of the Republican Party as possible, and have used it to do that exactly, which didn't work.
This seems like an almost suicidal desire to purge young men.
We would absolutely agree.
Is there, what do you have any idea as to why they think that's not going to affect the future of the party?
The right-wing party in the United States is largely held by people who are basically the human version of sickle cells. They look weird, they're shaped wrong, physiognomy check failed, frankly. And they're really not capable of doing the jobs that they've been given. They're not really capable of doing the jobs that they've been, they're not able to essentially exercise authority. They're not able to administrate the organizations they have under them. They're not able to recruit. They're not able to really fundraise very well. And when they do fundraise, they spend the money on the dumbest things. You probably remember this little scandal where we were spending $50,000 on floral displays out of the Republican Party under the 2 chairmen ago, when we had a national, presidency race going on. We couldn't really, $50,000 on flowers, $100,000 on makeup, $20,000 on God, here and there and everywhere, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on the most frivolous things. I think what they see in young men, and what makes them hate so bad, to answer the original question, is they see competency, They see a willingness to hold others accountable. They see a willingness to discipline themselves, and that makes them look bad, and it puts them kind of at risk of losing their job.
Okay, again, while this is all, pretty much par for the course for the grand old party and its many affiliates, it is somewhat encouraging to know that while their demise is inevitable, that they are working as hard as they can to hasten that demise. I did have some questions for you about generally what lessons have been gained from this, and I imagine there are quite a few. But could you start with the vetting question?
The vetting question, that's a good question. That's a question that you write. That's a question that political parties the world over have always had to kind of think about. Well, I mean, goodness, we have people asking, what is an American? We have people asking, what is a woman? It's a stupid boomer talking point, but the fact we're even asking it's terrible. Our vetting process, at least what I'm advocating for, and what I'm advocating to my little core group of the network is advocating for, some compartmentalization, a little bit of OPSEC in our little group chats. The group chats will be mission orientated. If I think I need to go and flip, let's see, I think places like Indiana, places like Wyoming and New Mexico are probably the weakest federations. I'm going to just let people be in there and let them do things, which they can just do. I'm a big fan of that saying. It's been repeating in my head constantly. I'm going to make sure that if I get a bad feeling about somebody, if someone else thinks that someone is weird or a spurg, that's not an immediate grounds for expulsion. But if someone else is something of a snake, they're dishonest, they are not forthcoming with information, and you can get young people really haven't been in the game for 10, 20 years. They can't lie on the spot the same way most political swamp creatures can. And if we just have any hint of that, they can go run a chapter. They can absolutely be recruiting. They can absolutely be great young Republicans and be great future swamp creatures. We just won't let them see any important information. They're not going to be running anything. And they certainly will not be left alone with any ladies.
Rough.
Long-running problem in the YRs. Long-running problem. Long-running problem.
Yeah.
Not with our code array. My guys are married and have kids. Their people catch sexual harassment charges.
Decidedly not based. For the vetting of people who have, because these kinds of organizations, any organization that wants to be effective in any way, especially if they're going to be larger than just a local township or maybe even a state, they're going to be looking for sources of funding. And you said that the way that some of these bad actors had kind of slipped in as the door was closing is by kind of showing off their money or promising money or even perhaps offering money. How do you distinguish the people who are offering or promising money that are good actors that mean it against these guys who kind of use that money for nefarious purposes?
The Bible says you'll know a tree by its fruit, right? Well, how have they been spending that money so far? Are they spending that money on buying Twitter bots? Are they spending that money on another long-running problem? Are they spending that money on drugs, on prostitutes, on credit card debt and fancy cars? Or do they spend that money on building a network? Do they spend that money on starting a business? Do they spend that money on donating it to political candidates and political causes, or spending it on the YRs and building their own personal network? If they're going to give us money, there's going to be, I can kind of tell what they spend money on already. I can look at that. I can look at their LinkedIn. I can look at where they live. I can look at, what they're wearing. I can see, okay, they're buying us. Anybody who's giving you money is trying to buy you and buy some influence. It's not a bad thing. It's a good show of faith, in my opinion. But I can see what they've bought before and what they value, and I'll know what they value with that money, if that makes any sense. I don't want to go on a big college lecture.
You know, it makes a lot of sense, and it's a good lesson that just because somebody is approaching you with money doesn't necessarily mean that they want to do something nefarious with the influence that they buy with it. What I'm getting from you, Mr. D, is that really personal vice is one of the big red flags that will tell you whether or not that person is trustworthy.
Correct. One of the biggest reasons why I was very turned on for the Old Glory Club was actually the vetting process. You guys very specifically asked, about, what kind of vices people get into, or at least you asked it in a way where I can kind of tell, because I've had to do the same exact thing on my end for what I've been doing. You've been trying to kind of dig those red flags out of people. And the fact you tried to see if I had any red flags was extremely attractive to me, because I knew I was coming into a serious organization of serious-minded men.
This is very good stuff, and important lessons for all Old Glory Club members to internalize. So I appreciate your insights. And besides the vetting and how it could have gone a little bit better, what are some of the key lessons that you were able to draw, not just from the article drop, but from the project of putting the whole network together?
You've probably heard people say this. I've seen some of it on, the old Bird app. But if you meet a competent young man, there's a good chance he's something right wing, at least. He may not even know the term right wing. He may not even understand the inside jokes. But if you kind of complain and talk to him a little bit, you're going to be very white pilled very quickly. If you keep, on the rare occasion you find these kind of people, they're all essentially right wing, and many of them don't even know it. You put a book in their hand or a couple cool video edits from DHS that drops on Twitter, and you're basically going to put an Old Glory Club membership in their hand very easily. Millions of Old Glory Club members who just don't know it yet. That's been a good lesson. That's been an interesting outcome where I've been a little more brave in what I talk about and who I talk to and what I've been talking to them about. I've had people mention watching and talk about watching very questionable e-celebrities who I otherwise wouldn't have thought that someone who is this or that would even know exists, let alone candidly sign off on some of the things they talk about. And we're talking about at all levels in civil and private sector leadership. Another great lesson, very simple, just turn all your chats to deleting after a week. I think every chapter that I've talked to in the YRs and other chapter leaders I've been able to talk to in this, in this organization and other organizations, everything's just turned off to a week before. It's just a simple thing. Always operate under a pseudonym. Obviously I know the real names of the other people in my Old Glory chapter, but we just can keep operating under pseudonym in where it is, whatever program we use. Very simple OPSEC. If you're not doing it, it's lazy, it's slobbish. Just turn the auto delete on and operate under a pseudonym. You don't have to be what a certain muscled man calls a face lord. Let's see. Read books. Read books on project management. Read books on data analytics. Read books on marketing. Part of the reason we've been so successful is because most of the network actually comes from the private sector world. They have, they've had to get jobs with real skills for real businesses that produce real products. And porting that over into politics has been it paid extreme dividends. We were able to pick up people and votes and chapters and basically power. We were able to pick up power in places that we would otherwise, I would not have been able to do so if I had just had regular online political spurgs. Wouldn't have gotten very far. I'll keep it to that. I'll keep it short.
No, this is great. This is these are a lot of the lessons that the Old Glory Club has learned as well, and it's good to hear them echoed from a brother who has engaged in something similar, but in a much different vein. Just jumping real quick, our producer came across something earlier today. It was a flyer. As for those of you listening, the flyer is black font on yellow. It says, "Have you been added to a Nazi or MAGA group chat? We pay cash for screenshots. Screenshot.gop. Verifiable scandals, racist rants, and sexist tirades all accepted. The worse, the better." Now, it's not much of a surprise that there are going to be slimy journalists who are trying to get this, although, I kind of repeat myself there, to kind of get this juice for themselves. But we got a little bit of information on where this screenshot.gop links to. And from what we can tell, it looks like it might actually be registered under a domain owned by the government of the United Kingdom. Take that for what it's worth, but it should serve as a reminder that the people who are anti-American are always going to be looking for ways to ruin the plans of heritage Americans who care about this country and are looking to restore it to its former glory, or even a greater glory in the future. I don't know, our producer, do you have the domain registration on hand? Okay, so we've got that. It's floating around somewhere else, but look into this if it piques your interest. I don't know, Mr. D, have you heard anything about this?
I saw it posted in a group chat, a group chat of friends, and we all made fun of it. It's ridiculous. I'm not surprised. Linda LaRouche vindicated again. I'm just joking, but people have been doing stuff like this for years. Journos there's one infamous journo who I'm not going to name that you already know, and the other brothers already know, who does exactly stuff like this. I wouldn't be surprised if she was involved, or if they didn't pick up from her personal playbook, essentially. So if any very pretty women, brothers, send you a DM on Instagram or on Twitter, it's absolutely honeypot. Don't do it.
Sage advice, and I laugh, but it's very true, and we all have to swallow our pride a little bit on this one. If a woman is showing great interest in you, that is hotter than any woman who has ever shown great interest in you before, be suspicious. But you should just be suspicious of women anyway. So, well, thank you, Mr. D. Rowdy, you have some wonderful brothers in the Oklahoma chapter, in the Iron Loam Gang. What can we expect to see from the Iron Loam Gang in the future? Do you have any plans coming up?
Well, one of my main initiatives is getting the chapter going has to do with a plan that I hope never has to come to fruition. But I was certainly motivated to get in gear to start a chapter with what the OGC organization Y did in response to Hurricane Helene in western North Carolina, and residing in a state now prone to all sorts of natural disasters between fires and especially tornadoes. Being able to mobilize a bunch of able-bodied young guys to help out our fellow statesmen wherever they may be in the event of disaster is something that I aspire toward, and I think we could carry out quite well. I've volunteered with some disaster relief organizations in the time that I've been here after a hurricane of November of last year. Again, hopefully it never comes to that, going forward, that there isn't a tornado, that affects any part of the state in a serious way. But if that were to come about, we've already discussed organizations worth volunteering with, doing that together, learning how they operate, and eventually how we can get our own operation going to be able to deploy disaster relief throughout the state, wherever it may be needed.
A worthy cause, and it's that's wonderful to hear. Have you been in talks so far with any of the sister chapters in your area about kind of linking up with them? Because it's not, you guys aren't an island out there. You have the whole network to draw from. So has that been something that's on your mind?
It has. At the national conference this year, I spoke a little bit with Jay Ford, who, as we all know, did commendable work along with Mellon and many others out in Western North Carolina, and planning a OGC-wide committee specifically to deal with allocating resources as well as deploying members to areas that will need disaster relief if it ever may come about, is something I really hope to get more involved with as the formal recognition of the organization is able to go forward.
Well, that's perfect. And I know that Jay Ford also has some experience now setting up 501c3s for just such a purpose, which is a long and costive experience, no doubt. Before we wrap up, let's take a look over at our super chats. Christopher Burks comes in with his $2 salute. Salute to you, sir. Always good to see you. Don Browning, our favorite Australian, sends us a 10 Australian dollar super sticker, dollary dues, I believe they call them, of a person jumping and saying yippee. Good to see you, Don.
That's what we do to inaugurate every meeting. I'm surprised you knew that.
They say women's intuition is a powerful thing. Psychic, so. And Son of Hastur, our very own man from the land of the cold winds, for $5. Looking forward to this one. Sometimes a negative example is as informative as a positive one. Indeed, sir, I'd say that they are often more informative. And I think Mr. D gave us all a lot to chew on, and also something that every man of the OGC can benefit from without a doubt. And that's that for the super chats. Guys, this hour has flown by. I really appreciate all of your what you've brought to us. Before we close up, is there anything else that you guys would like? We have a message here from the Black Apple Trading Company in Arkansas, which are also prioritizing disaster relief.
Excellent.
So not too far off. In fact, I think there's a large border there that you guys might be able to work along together. Is there anything else that was on the top of your head? If you had to say anything to your brothers across the nation, any words of wisdom before we part?
I'd like to make a few remarks just having to do with everything Mr. D covered. Again, thank you so much for coming on, and having brothers like you in the organization really is invaluable. As largely an outsider to everything going on with formal party politics and the YRs, seeing the group chat leaks become this major story across the Bird app and among our guys felt like a throwback. It felt like something that took place back when Obama was president or during Trump's first term, which really put into perspective just how far the right has come as a force, not only within American politics, really having a seat at the table of the Republican Party for the first time in my lifetime, but within the culture. I think young men, especially, as Mr. G alluded to, whether they're political or not, if they value their lives, if they value their loved ones and their heritage, see through the lies that all of us were brought up in, be it through public school, mass media, etc., and realize just how hollow of a vision that is to build a life on and to sacrifice for, build a family for. It, as unfortunate as it was to see people who we know have their hearts and minds in the right place be besmirched in such a way and torn down, the fact that seeing the sitting vice president signal just how silly it was to give any attention to offhanded remarks by young guys amongst themselves when the leading candidate in the state of Virginia for Attorney General is actively cheering on and doubling down the murder of children for being raised by Republican or right-wing parents, was one of the most white-pilling things I've ever seen. And that sentiment is shared not only at that very top level, but across all sorts of influential people within the Republican Party, within the right-wing cultural scene, and increasingly within mainstream America. And it's the perfect opportunity to grow the OGC. Troubling times, I'm sure, are ahead, and I intended to be a part, along with the rest of my brothers, in building a formidable organization to resist them and keep our vision alive.
Amen to that, Rowdy. And I know I can speak for everyone at Central when I say that we're very much looking forward to seeing what the Iron Loam Gang can be putting out in the future, as well as all of our chapters. You're all valuable in your own ways, and this is a very rousing episode of the Chapter House. At least it has been for me, and I hope it has been for you as well. Mr. D, do you have any parting shots?
Doesn't matter what happens going forward. My personal advice to every brother: now is absolutely the time to get involved. Now is absolutely the time to get involved in anything political you can think of. Show up 2, 3 times, and you'll know the vibe whether or not it's for you. You'll know whether or not you can be in charge within the next 6 months. I've said this term multiple times. It defines a large part of my ethos, and I ascribe a large part of whatever worldly success that I've been able to achieve. That isn't, of course, the will of God. You can just do things. Go out into your local communities, go out into anything you want to enter into, and just start doing things. Successful people will come and find you and fund you and platform you.
Let this serve as a call to action for all our brothers. You are the change that is needed. For the Old Glory Club, I'd like to thank the Iron Loam Gang. Rowdy, Mr. D, thank you for joining us and for giving us this look into what's going on, not only in Oklahoma,